In this season at Level Up Stronger, we're speaking with women across the globe who have found careers in male-dominated trades industries. It's often hard for women to see themselves in these male-dominated careers, but there are a whole lot of amazing women who are not only working in trades, but thriving. So we explore how they got there, what it's like now, and get their advice on how they got started. In today's podcast, we meet Amanda Cooling, who knew after starting college that it just wasn't for her. And she most definitely didn't want to spend her entire life sitting behind a desk all day. 7 years later, Amanda doesn't regret her choice to level up stronger and become a journeyman electrician, specializing in commercial voice data and video. Now, Amanda balances this dynamic career, being a mom, and supporting other women through the international brotherhood, or should we say sisterhood, of electrical workers. Welcome, Amanda, to the show. Let's jump right in. What I'd like to know from you is tell me a little bit about your background and what you do.
I am Amanda Cooling, and I'm from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I am part of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. So I am a voice data video technician in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So that's local 405. And what that normally means is basically low voltage electrical work. So that includes running any data cables, which would be used for phone or internet. And then we do security work, anywhere from door access to cameras, specialty things more like banks where you'd want additional safety checks. And then we do fiber installation, fire alarm, which is kind of in between the inside and then our contract. And I always forget one. So voice data video, some of it's kind of going on the wayside. Like we're not seeing as much phone. So, I mean, we still install it. We do cable TV installation, stuff like that.
That's really exciting. So tell me, what is a day in the life of what you guys do every day, and how did you get into being an electrician?
It's rather interesting because I actually went to college, like most kids I knew, and I started in psychology, and then I was like, okay, this is not for me. I don't want to go to school for 8 years. And so I went to finance because I was like, hey, everybody needs finance, right? Another thought to it. But then you get out into the world and you start doing it and you're like, I cannot sit at this desk all day because this is going to drive me crazy, right? So it's constantly like, okay, my in bin is done. It goes to out bin and then suddenly your in bin is filled again. So I really struggled with feeling that sense of accomplishment in a day. And my husband's an electrician. And so he and I kind of kicked around what he does. And I had told him some of my summer jobs, they weren't ever in construction, but they were hands-on type jobs. And then a college job I had was working with audio equipment. And so, I had like that kind of going for you. It was a little bit more techie, which I enjoyed. So he said, these are some jobs that I tend to see that are taking applications. They are trades jobs. And so I chose to follow the avenue of the low voltage technician. So on a daily basis, there's a lot of pulling of cable. It doesn't seem like that much, but easily you're pulling 12 cables at a time, which takes a lot more arm strength than you think it does. So a lot of moving equipment, but the nice thing about it is that it's all different. So not only am I pulling it, I'm getting pathway in. So to a lot of people, that's just a word that you throw around because you don't think about it if you're not in the field. That's installing safe ways for you to store any cable while you're pulling it and then for the future. So that's a lot of, it would be like a basket, which would be made out of wire, or definitely hooks that you run. And then my favorite part was normally terminations because it's a lot more technical and hands-on. I do fiber from time to time. You tend to kind of get on a team that does that. Fiber work takes a lot of concentration and it's very challenging. So that was something I always enjoyed doing. The nice thing about this job is that you can really mix it up. So if you're on a large team where you might be doing a building like Facebook, yeah, you're going to be doing the same thing day in and day out for a while. When you get into a smaller company, it can really vary. So you can go on a bigger project, which might be like a commercial building. So you're going to be there for a month or two at a time. Or you can be sent out on service calls, right? So somebody's having a problem with their cameras aren't working, or they're deciding to do an upgrade, or their Wi-Fi is just not the best. So they're trying to decide their options. Then you get to go out there and kind of make those changes for them, which everybody is always happy when you leave. They're not always happy when you show up because that normally means there's a problem. But there's a lot of different aspects that really keep it fresh from day in to day out. So it is definitely hands-on. You strap your tools on at the beginning of the day and see where it leads you, but it's definitely gratifying at the end of the day.
That's awesome. And so do you find that you're the only woman on the team most of the time? Are there other women on the team? And how does the company that you work for handle women in trades?
When I started my apprenticeship, so I started in 2015, and it was just me at the shop as a woman. So then there was 5 other guys, and then our 2 project managers that were also men. And it was very few women to come by. As my apprenticeship progressed, there was a couple more women in my class, but we would combine classes with Des Moines. And they have a higher population up there, so then they have a more diverse base. So I think there was maybe 4 women up there, and then it was me from Cedar Rapids that was going up there. So I mean, it was nice to see other women when I would go to class, and you can always talk about stuff. My instructor was a woman, which was really great. But as I progressed through my apprenticeship, I was starting to see more women in my classification. There wasn't still that many women in the inside program, but by the time I turned out, so it was a 3-year program, I was then running my own crew as a foreman, which there was 1 woman on my team. But then as that job progressed, it kind of shrunk down because the size of the project that was going on. I was rare in the fact that I was able to have an all-women crew. So it was me and then 2 other ladies. It seems like my classification tends to draw a lot more of the women to it. There's a lot more detail work. Not saying that there's not detail work on the inside, but we deal with very fine wires. And there's that detail orientation that my project manager always said that he really enjoyed having women on the crew because they would take the time to do it, to like focus, make sure it's done right, done neat. Because a lot of our stuff is not in conduit, like inside piping or, your regular wiring for outlets is. So IT staff who tend to be a lot pickier about what they like to see in their telecom rooms, they like a nice, clean look in there. And so he says women tend to take that time to do it. But, I have a women's group for my local and then for our district, which is a 5-state jurisdiction. And then I also work with a women's group within the state of Iowa for all trades. And, we're all kind of fighting this battle of like trying to get women into it. So I'm not seeing a really large jump. But I am seeing more women asking questions, which is always a favorable thing. And then by the time I stepped out for COVID, it was the fact of who made less money in the house. And that was me, which I was happy that that's the conversation we were able to have. But I stayed home with the kids for a while until we figured out what was going on. But I am seeing more women on average on the construction sites, which is always exciting.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely refreshing to see that you're starting to see more women who are taking part. And I am as well. It's still nowhere near the numbers that it really should be. I mean, we're less than 5-10% in some industries, depending on which one it is. So that's sad. So as part of the union, is the union supporting women or is it still the good old boys club? Probably a loaded question.
It is a loaded question, right? Our union does have initiatives to get women's groups going, just to give some of that support. So in Iowa, we don't have nearly as big a cities as like St. Louis or Kansas City, where you have a large, diverse base. So my local is a local of 700 people, roughly. I think there's technically over, but we have roughly 14 women. So another local that does more of utilities that's also in town, their local spans the whole state, and they have 3 women. So it's really that hard line of like a local can be supportive, but if you're not having women come in the door,
absolutely,
it's really hard to get those funds out there to understand all the needs. I would go to our progress meeting, which includes all the 5 districts in our state, and our district vice president for the area would preside over some of those meetings. And he would love to have me talk in some of them because I started out my apprenticeship pregnant. I ended my apprenticeship pregnant. It's very unusual. And so then he's like, you would always bring up topics that I would never think of. So you have like the pull of trying to grow, not understanding all of the needs, even if you do, but then women have all these other things that they typically have to respond to, right? Like there's your daycare, there's getting the kids to their appointments, there is making sure things in the household, household duties typically do still fall to women, not that they don't or they're not split, but you have meetings at night for your union. Who's watching your kids?
Yeah,
So
no, that's hard. It's hard to balance.
I have found a lot of women in my local that are joining, speaking of newer members, that are single moms. So it is such a great benefit to have all the union benefits to it. But at the same time, a lot of these union events are at nights. And a single mom, especially if she doesn't have enough family around to help out or really good friends, you're stuck. You can't necessarily do everything that a male member can. Especially when a lot of these guys, maybe they plan it because they're young single guys or they have older kids because of the generation gap. So there's definitely initiatives going on. I've been hearing more specifically IBEW locals starting to get maternity leave into their contract, which is really hard.
That is really awesome. That's really awesome that they're doing that.
Whenever we go to an IBW convention of some sort, whether it's a women's convention or just in general, we have to acknowledge that our union isn't just electrical workers. A lot of unions that, they have classifications or they're broken out between divisions. So we have a lot of women who are in maybe the manufacturing area, who we have a larger density for women membership, who already have a lot of these things. So then, it might not be as big of an issue to talk about it as a big group together. But then when you get the construction locals together, or even something like utilities, we are still feeling that struggle to fight to get that more unified front. So even if it is a goal up top of the hierarchy, it might not be filtering down as well. I mean, it's kind of a long answer to your question.
No. Yeah. And no, that's really great feedback. I really appreciate that because it is something that, like, if we're going to figure out how to make this all work, then we have to actually look at it at all levels. And there's multiple unions. There's multiple different ways of doing this to be successful. And there's definitely challenges. Single moms. I've talked to several ladies now who are single moms or have kids at home, and just the challenges of being able to balance all of that and still be a part of an industry that needs people and that's been male dominated. So they don't really necessarily think about, well, how does this impact every gender? So there's still the gender bias there. So for sure.
It's hard because you try to tell women, you need to be the face of your change, right? So in order for them to really have our opinions, our issues in the forefront of their mind, is you got to be in the room. But telling women to be in the room and still not having a good way to help them be in the room is that hard struggle. So I've talked with some people and said, for my women's meetings, if you have kids, bring your kids. I don't care. I can set up the projection screen and play a movie. I will bring crafts. I will bring board games. I will bring snacks, whatever it is. Just let me know. But then there comes that hard line of, okay, when you have a union meeting, is it feasible? How would you cover somebody to pay for it? There's unfortunately the liability, right, if a kid gets hurt while in a meeting. But those are things that I've brought up and nobody really has an answer to. If there's some way to start reaching out and saying okay, we want a woman to be on our e-board, we want a woman to be the recording secretary, but she needs her undivided attention at that meeting, what can we do to help put something together?
Yeah, I don't see why they couldn't, if they're going to hold the meetings in the evenings, and maybe there are even single dads. I mean, we need to take that into consideration too, that need a place to park the kid for an hour while you're in your meeting or however long it lasts. So should daycare of some sort of the kids can watch a movie, which would be ideal. So I think that if we're going to do better, we have to start coming up with alternative solutions to do better. And you're right. If women want to be part of the change, they're going to have to be at the forefront and sit at the table. And so that's a very important part of this. What would you say is your recommendation for any women going and deciding they want to be an electrician? What would be your recommendation? How do they get started? What's the process? Should they go to school? Where do they start?
So I started very green. So I totally sympathize with anybody that is really nervous, apprehensive, doesn't know where to start. We have our union, which is once we are graduated from our schooling, we go and get our jobs from there. But a lot of people don't know that each of our trades have a training school directly. So ours is in town, it's the Cedar Rapids Electrical Joint, JATC is the abbreviation. It's a school that's put together with a joint cooperation between our contractors, who say that, yes, we will hire union labor and then our union hall. So we jointly put money in together to fund the books, the schooling, and all of that sort of stuff for the students that'll come up. I've done talks with like high schoolers who aren't sure if this is what they want to do. I really encourage, if you're looking to see if you like working with your hands, look through your local community paper, because lots of times you'll find classes being taught, even if it's simple as around here, like Lowe's will do specials for, like build a birdhouse, build a shelf, build something where it helps you kind of figure out if you like working with your hands. Otherwise, a lot of women I've known started with Habitat for Humanity, because that gives you another taste. You kind of get to work with some people, because they'll have some people who are seasoned out building houses. So they'll help you kind of get the hang of things. Of sometimes it's as basic as learning the tool names, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's so intimidating, especially, like behind me, those are lineman's pliers. If somebody tells you like, oh, go grab some pliers, you wouldn't believe how many pliers are in the aisles at your home store, right?
Absolutely.
Even sometimes they look the same. Like, these are needle nose pliers. Well, which size needle nose pliers? Some of the most basic things can be very intimidating. So definitely look in your community, see if there's small events like that. Definitely check out your home stores, sometimes craft stores. They're really trying to help women get more hands-on. That's a really good way to basic start. Otherwise, sometimes you'll have, especially, it's more high schooler geared, but they'll have trade fairs, right? You're starting to see more of those. But if you go into any of these schools, pipe fitters, whether it's the tinners, which would be HVAC, I know there's a woman who's very active around here who's in the painters union. So she's talked about, but they do things like drywall and they do texture spraying and all sorts of stuff. You walk into any of those places and they'll give you a tour of their labs. If you tell them this is something that you might be interested in, they're more than willing to help you. So if you go on their websites, they're going to want you to be at least 18, a GED or graduation certificate from high school. It sounds kind of funny, but I was told a lot of places actually prefer you to be really green for the fact of then they know that they're going to train you. They're going to train you right. So they know that you're not going to be unsafe or you don't have unsafe practices learned. Something like that. When it comes time for summer's a perfect time to get some of these entry-level jobs. So you can get some experience. This is, if maybe you're in college, you're not working over the summer or you're not taking classes over the summer, it would be a really great time for you to say, maybe if I don't want to do college, is this something that's for me? It's a perfect time because you normally get plenty of hours because, especially here in the Midwest, we try crunching in as much as we can in that summertime because once it starts getting cooler, nobody wants to be outside. I know some people who have done like night courses at a college because around here we have Kirkwood College and they do like welding classes. They do have electrical classes. You can get kind of your feet wet for a smaller amount of money than if you were to throw yourself fully into it, where you still might be able to keep your day job.
So does the union then pay for the schooling? Because, college right now is super expensive, right? And most people, rather than having to go to college and spend $40,000 to $60,000+ for a college degree that you may or may not use once you get out, right? Going into the trades is definitely something you can use and start making decent money right away, right?
It's a very good question because a lot of people don't know. I knew because of my husband. He went through the apprenticeship as well. So what it is a work your way through program. What I had to do, which varies between local to local, is you pay for your books. For people who didn't go to college, it was still hard to bite, right? You got to bite the bullet and you pay the books. They'll allow you to do it in segments because $600 to $800 can still be a lot. But you don't pay for your schooling. All that they ask is you complete your course. That varies. So my program was 3 years for the low voltage. Our residential program, I believe, is a 2-year program. And then the inside wireman is a 5-year program. So then what they ask you to do is once you are graduated, you work for that number of years in the local. So basically you're working off your hours because it's like a weekly contribution that comes off your check. And part of it is like an assessment through your local. And then an assessment is done on the contractor's side. So basically you're paying them back through work for all that schooling that you went to. So if for some weird reason you get out in the field and you say, like, I can't stand doing this anymore, then you would have the ability to take out a loan and then pay back what you would have worked. But people have to realize, especially for our program, the amount of schooling that you put in, or time in the classroom, and then your worked hours, if you just take like 3 more college courses at a community college, you can have your associate's degree. So if that is something that's really important to you, that's great. All you have to pay is basically like a literature class, a art class, and then maybe like a computer class. You know what I mean? Some of what you have left to do is very minimal, and you can still have a college degree.
That's awesome. So it is really great that you're able to have a career and a career that makes really good money, right? Without really having to shell out thousands and thousands of dollars worth of training. Because I can't tell you how many people I know who went to school and did a 4-year bachelor's and they don't even come anywhere near using their degree.
So when I graduated, it was definitely like an employer's market. I mean, it was just completely saturated for finance. And I was struggling to find a job that paid $14 an hour. And so,
yeah, isn't that sad? You have a college degree and you still are not making hardly any money. As an electrician or in any of the trades, like the longer you stay in, the more money you make. And we're talking 6 figures. Yeah. Like you can get up there, especially on the commercial and industrial side. The longer you stay in your craft, the more money that you can make, which is pretty phenomenal.
There's a lot of misconceptions of how this works just because so many people don't work in a union. So what I get on my check, so roughly in the field, I would be getting $30 an hour. But on top of that is my benefits. So a lot of times in your office work, you might make, so let's say it's still $30 an hour, okay, just for easy. But then out of that is now coming your health insurance per week and your 401k contributions. Anything else is going to be coming out of that 30. So instead in the field, it's 30, but every time you negotiate or have your raise, part of it is going to your health and welfare, and then part of it is going to your pension. So no matter what, I'm always getting that 30 on the check, 30 an hour, but then you have all those additional benefits on top of it. So then I can still choose to do my 401k to save that extra, but then that would then be coming out of my hourly pay. So, I mean, having to explain that to my mom was a very different concept for her, that it's a lot more than you initially hear it to be.
100%. Yeah. And because we do government contracting, so it's very similar. And I actually have several of our projects that have a collective bargaining agreement. And you're 100% right. It's that base wage rate that you're guaranteed is yours, and that comes home to you, and nothing comes out of that. And it's also great. I think the union has a really good, having that collective bargaining agreement in there that gives steady increases over time is definitely helpful, because let's say you go to work for a commercial entity that doesn't have a union, there's no guarantee that you're getting a raise. And there's not anybody really there making sure that you do. And you're subject to weird fluctuations in what the company's health insurance is like, where a union helps with that. So in addition to union pensions or the 401k or however that's all set up. So you're required to take part in some sort of way to save for your retirement, which on the commercial side or the non-union side is really a choice that you get to make. And that doesn't come out of your base wage rate, which is great. So that's a phenomenal way to protect, I think, what your take home is, and also ensure that you have access to really good health insurance and a good retirement plan and training, because the union usually does, at least all the ones we have, there's some sort of training program available that they can take part in, which is phenomenal. So yeah, I think the union definitely has a place here for all of this. And we need to work on them to make sure that they have those additional things for women specifically, because like you're saying, maternity leave is an important part, and most employers don't have maternity leave anymore, right? Unless they're a large company that mostly employs women, they're probably doing away with maternity leave. It's just not as prevalent, I guess, anymore, which is sad. So it's hard to be a single parent or a parent who is in any trade, because how do you get to spend any time with your new baby or right out of the bat? So it's very interesting. What would you say this issue with it being a male-dominated industry has been an ongoing theme to every conversation that I've had, and the discrimination. And it seems to be the one thing that I repeatedly hear is potentially a deterrent to entering into the trades industries. How do you deal with that discrimination, and what's the mindset that these women need to have walking into that industry?
I was just in a conference this last weekend and we were talking about this, as there was a woman in the room who is the only female iron worker in her local. Yeah, it's intimidating. It is very intimidating. I think my first maybe couple months, I tried to look as much like a boy as possible to blend in. I tell some people it's this weird line between they want you to be a lesbian for the fact that they hope you're going to be kind of gruff and tough and not really girly, but then again, they don't want the complexities that might come with that. So it's this horrible statue to try to live up to. And there's a lot of women I've come to talk to that really struggle to keep their femininity and to not be noticed on the job, because it's a hard line. I feel rather blessed in the fact that I really didn't have that much problems with it. But the same fact, I know there's a ton of women who do have problems with it. I was in a bit of a smaller shop, which can be a pro and a con, right? Because if you don't get along with everybody, well, you're stuck. But with it being a smaller shop, for me, they got to know me rather quickly. They got to realize that I do have a sense of humor. You don't have to walk on eggshells around me. But at the same time, it's one of these things where when you show up and you have your tough face on and you're there to do the work and you show that that's what they really want, right? They want anybody to show up on time, on time, and to do the job. And so oftentimes it's a thing of, right, you got to put your confident face on, even if you don't feel it. I think I'd sent something to you about that, where you think of any man that shows up, even if he's not sure of what he knows he's going to do it, he's going to tell you he does, and he's going to do it. And who cares what it's going to turn out right? It's this magical confidence that they show up with that women automatically are going to second guess.
I think we've been taught to be smaller than we are, and we should always be self-confident. And that I haven't figured out how to help women turn that switch off, because it does. It takes a lot of internal confidence to make it in this world. I can't tell you the number of times. I'm actually at the point where I hope you underestimate me when we come and sit down at the table together, because I'm going to run circles around you, because that means you're dumb. You know what I mean? Like, if you're already underestimating me just because I'm a woman, I got this in the bag. But I've sat across the table with men who have literally looked me in the face and said, I hope you fail. You know what I mean? I just in that, if I didn't have good confidence in my own capabilities, in that I don't care if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to figure it out. And I'm not going to let you see me figuring it out. I'm just going to come to the table 100% confident that I've got it. But I think that's a tough thing to ingrain in. And I've seen it. I've seen it in every one of the women that I've interviewed, that warrior spirit, if you will, that enables them to come to the table and be successful. And I haven't figured out, how do we teach the next generation of girls to be that, and to not let the things that are said. I mean, you have to have a little bit thicker skin. There's always going to be the body humor, and you're working with men.
Right.
The F word is
apparently penis jokes are
exactly. Exactly. So I think you kind of have to be willing to just look past some of that, because it is what it is. But it's really interesting, I think, that where does that mindset come from? How do you teach the ladies, the girls that are in high school now who are too afraid to be in shop class with a bunch of guys? How do we teach them that?
Right. That's really hard. And I've talked to some ladies who were kind of like me. My dad didn't hide tools from me, but he would normally by default pick my brother, like, Trevor, come on, he's the oldest. He's another guy. They know what they're going to do, and they're just going to go out and do it, right? So part of that confidence to me comes in the fact of do some research. There is nothing wrong with watching how-to videos. because they're going to explain to you the steps of something before you get it, or you're going to start getting familiarized with tools. It's not a problem to go to that hardware store and look at the aisle of tools. And if somebody comes to ask you, like, do you need help? Well, as a matter of fact, I do. I need you to explain me the difference of these, right? Because so many times somebody might throw something at you like, okay, go get me channel locks. And then one, might not know what they look like. Two, they might have a really smart ass response. Or three, you're going to get an exasperated sigh, right? So sometimes like your basic rundown of what your tools are, right? Sometimes it's stopping somebody to say like, hey, I don't understand that jargon yet. I had somebody tell me to write something down, and for the longest time, I felt stupid bringing a piece of paper, or I laugh and say construction paper because it is a cardboard box piece that you tear off because you can always find cardboard. So I always call it my construction paper and write stuff down. I always felt too self-conscious about it. But there's nothing worse than angering someone because they told you got back to the gang box or you got back to the cart and you forgot, right? So then you have to come back, and that is now more time wasted. And if somebody's already annoyed, that's just going to feed the fire. So to me, do a little research. There's books out there. You can go to the hardware store and pick up, like if you're looking for carpentry, right? You're going to open the front and it's going to tell you what tools you need. And sometimes just having the right tools and being ready and having an idea of what they should be called is going to help with that confidence, because nobody likes to go in and not know anything. Part of it is also feeling confident in what you're wearing. For women, it is so hard to find construction stuff that fits. Even being with a union company who has a safety department, they come to your site, they want to say like, hey, do you have all your safety equipment? And I say, well, I do, but the vest that you gave so-and-so doesn't fit. Do you have a smaller size? And they'll tell you the smallest size they have is a large, but it's a men's large. Okay, some of these ladies are definitely not men's large size. And so when you have those issues of like your safety stuff is not fitting, you have every right to contact your project manager or contact the safety and say like, hey, can you please ship it to my site? Or if it's urgent, or even if you're not at a union company, so they're not supplying you all your safety stuff, you can go into your supply houses and they have sales counters and they can help you. When I was running my crew, I said, okay, ladies, I'm sick and tired of this. Get in the van. We're going for a drive. And so we would drive there and you step up to the counter. I said, okay, I need stuff that fits these ladies. What do you have?
No, yeah, for sure. And it's unfortunate. I am starting to see more products being made specifically for women today than before, but you are 100% right. I've been on like you search long and wide for something, because we have boobs and hips and smaller hands. That's my most annoyed part, is getting gloves that the fingers are half an inch too long, or ginormous and falling off of you. Yeah.
I've seen people show up with gardening gloves. Some things we can do and then they'll be fine. But to get some of the extra safety requirements, yeah. So some of these women's groups that you can try to join are really helpful. I think there's one that's called Handy Women, is really great because it's women doing projects mostly at their house. And so some of these pages that you can get on and you can find, and unfortunately some of it's networking. It's through the networkings that you find some of these, because heaven knows I didn't know about them when I started. But that's how you get to find some of these resources. So I mean, like that's something I really like to do. In my women's groups, I post like, hey, Dungarees is having a factory second sale, because these women are having the investment up front of like having to find tools, having to find shoes, safety boots that don't clunk around. They're doing factory seconds, so they're discounted women's pants that should hold up longer. For me, my comfort zone was bib overalls. Some women I know wear women's pants. More power to you. I could not get them to stay up or not bust on the thighs, because this lady has thighs. So I like to tell people like, okay, I wear bib overalls and I can wear leggings underneath them. Like, they're super comfortable. But you know what? No one can see up my shirt, which when you're on a ladder and someone comes to ask you a question, it crosses my mind. You weren't going to see my butt crack. pants weren't falling down because they were supported by my shoulders. And I didn't always have to wear my tool belt, so it could keep me a little bit more even throughout the hips. Because I know some people, their tool belts just get so heavy that it hurts the hips. Those are some tips that I like to recommend to people to do to maybe try to get more confidence into going. But some of it is you fake it till you make it.
Yeah. And I think I always looked at Home Depot as a giant art supply store. Like that was how I always approached Home Depot, is just like, it's always been just a giant art supply store for me. Like what else, what can I create with Home Depot? All of those raw materials and carpentry. I've done carpentry for years, but it's super fun. I think if you stop looking at as something that's intimidating and start looking at, like you said, go out, search the web, you can find everything you could possibly need on YouTube. Mm-hmm. There are people who teach entire HVAC courses and electrical courses on YouTube. Yeah. And so that for me is phenomenal. Like anytime I don't know how to do something, there's always someone that's smarter than me who has already figured out a way to film it and put it on the internet. And so I think that's a phenomenal way to at least get your fingers into something and see if you're interested in it before you take a trip somewhere and start like on a career path that you're not sure if it's for you or not. But yeah,
right.
For sure. So what would be your recommendation for any listener or any women or even young people out there today? Like, what would be your recommendation as far as how has trades been rewarding to you, and what's the trajectory long-term for people in trades, basically?
The funny thing about trades that I never really realized is how many paths it can take you. I have women concerned about, okay, well, if I'm going to have kids and if I can't stay in the field while they're really small, what's the point of me doing this just to stop? Or, what if you tear your shoulder and, what are you going to do because you need that for your job? Well, the trajectory of a tradesperson can go so many different directions. It's definitely something, if you don't like to sit still, it's for you. If you like to constantly be learning something, it's for you. As technologies improve, and especially as we're heading to like efficiency, right? Efficiency is touching every part of trades. It might be touching it differently or faster, but there's always something to learn. There's always something to learn from somebody else. Especially as you get to these bigger cities, you might start on commercial, that you might go to industrial, or you might get sent to a building that's been there for decades, for centuries. And there's always something new to be learning. And to me, it puts your mind to the test. I didn't realize, I don't want to look down on anybody who does construction, but you don't think of how much processing and problem solving that needs to be done on a daily basis. But as you look at where it can go, there's so many ways. Whether you're a union member, you can go, right? So for me, as a union member, I have the option to either rise in the ranks within my company. I can be a journeyman to an apprentice, which involves teaching. I love teaching people. You can then journey up to a foreman where you're running a small crew, right? Which takes more problem solving, more interactions with people. If you're really good with people, that might really start to appeal to you. You could be on your own and run your own van, which is a lot more problem solving because you're going into different scenarios every day where nothing is the same, right? Your field is the same, right? But then you can travel that direction. Or for a union member, you can start becoming more active in your union, where then you're taking on more responsibilities. You might be working with your own members more to get the most out of their membership. Or within the international structure, they start to, watch who their leaders are and say, hey, you're really good at this. We might want you in this position. Or do you want to be on a board? To me, being on a board is really gratifying because you can be in the process of making an event. You can be making that change to create the diversity. You can be giving your suggestions because you see that that's what's impacting in the field. But if something were to happen for you that maybe you can't continue working with your hands, there are so many avenues that you can go down that would not be directly related. So, there's sales positions, right? Anything that you use in the field has a company that sells it. And there's nothing that they like more than somebody who's used their product. And then you can go into project design. For me, I had made the jump. I had an awesome opportunity to work in an engineering office to make the blueprints, to make the specs, to help set the standards for a job. You can go into home inspection. Your possibilities are just so much bigger than just strapping tools on every day. And so even if possibly, you do this for a while and you think man, if I have to smell paint for one more day, I'm going to lose my mind. Guess what? There's other options for you. Or there's learning opportunities that can maybe enhance your opportunities for what you do. There's different ways that you can expand your trade that it shouldn't just be thought of as somebody who doesn't have any options.
No, because it's really a gateway to doing more stuff. I mean, I started out in the field and worked my way up to a junior project manager, then a project manager, then a vice president and division man. I created an entire division and then became the COO. So, I mean, like you just keep working your way up. And I can't imagine at this point going back and doing the field work, but I do occasionally get my hands dirty still. Like I'll go out and spend time with our, at one of our job sites with our staff. And so you're 100% right. Bless everyone who decides to stay in and continue to, but it's physically demanding, right? So over time, the physical demands of all of that, and sometimes you are ready for that change or that next step up in responsibility. So, and I have found that I learned more by actually doing the job than I ever did sitting in a classroom or going to college. Yes. Right. And how to run a company. And because I had that experience of starting at the bottom and working my way up, I have a better appreciation for what my staff are going through, which yes. I think ultimately makes me a better leader. So, I mean, there is that rather than just landing as somebody who has not had that experience and not really understanding, I feel like those people are kind of disconnected from what their staff is going through on the daily. So that's I think a very good point to make that is definitely something that as a potential, you don't have to just stay in pulling cable and things like that. There is a gradual progression up the chain. It's hugely rewarding to see the progress that you've made over the years, which I think is pretty phenomenal. So any last words for the listeners on why they should go into the electrical trade?
It's definitely something that'll keep you on your toes. If you're still in school, this is why you do fractions. There's so many reasons why you should, especially for women. I can't imagine sitting in an office anymore. There's so much camaraderie that comes with it. Of course, there's going to be days that are like really tough and tiring and you're going to come home and just collapse and not want to wake up for the next day. But it's been some of the most fun jobs I have ever had because of all the different interactions, all the different people you get to meet, all the scenarios, all of the cool technology that you get to see, and sometimes some of the history that you get to see too. It's definitely an option for anybody. And the sweat, I think, makes it so much more worth it at the end of the day. And especially when you're rewarded nicely with your paycheck, that definitely you appreciate it at the end of the day. But if you do decide to get in, don't let that paycheck fool you. Sometimes there is a lag in work, especially if it's cold. So make sure you talk to people who help you financially, right? To make sure we get paid more because you understand it is seasonal work. You got to make sure you do money management and plan for those rainy days because they're going to come. Hopefully they're few and far between by the way that the industry looks to be going. Hopefully they're few, but make sure you plan accordingly. There's too many people that live right up to their budget, right? And then when those layoffs come, they feel the pressure.
Well, and the layoffs are often because a project comes to an end or something of that nature, and there's a lag time, you're correct, between one project and the next, if it's a construction project or something like that. So definitely, and you're right, there's usually a gap, and then you get picked back up on another project. So that's something definitely to take into consideration. And often there's unemployment and things like that will cover those gaps, but definitely be financially conscious in all things that you do, regardless of what industry you're in, for sure. Well, I really appreciate, Amanda, you spending the time with me today to get this podcast out. I mean, the goal is always to encourage women to go into the industry, and until they can see themselves in the industry, I think it's going to be difficult. And so that's where I'm really trying to bridge that gap by helping women see and hear other women's stories that they are actually succeeding and thriving in these industries. And so that's, I think, super important. Balancing being a mom and having a career is challenging, no matter what industry you work in. But powerful women like Amanda are challenging the gender bias of the electrical industry and showing that women can be successful no matter what field they're in. The trades give women multiple avenues to excel, provide for their families, and come home daily feeling like they contributed to the world at large. The most advantageous part about trades jobs are the continuous need for workers the opportunities for job advancement, and the education and skills you learn both in the classroom and on the job. Oh, and did I mention that electrician is one of the top 10 recession-proof jobs? Despite the gender disparity, women can and do thrive in these industries. Amanda and others sharing their stories help us to see that if it's something that you're passionate about, take the leap. At Level Up Stronger, we're striving to help women improve their lives, provide for their families, and build a career. And what a better place than the trades where women can be recognized for their amazing skills, their expertise, their courage, and the craftsmanship. We encourage all women to consider these industries, talk to women in the field like Amanda, and get their perspective on how rewarding this experience has been. This has been another episode of Level Up Stronger. Join us next time for more Life of Women in Trades and discover how you too can level up stronger in your life. Thank you for joining us on Level Up Stronger. For references to resources mentioned in this episode and to receive updates on future podcasts, check us out on social media or at levelupstronger.com. And remember, each time we take risk, educate ourselves, and apply what we've learned to our lives, we level up stronger. Each time we level up stronger, we have the opportunity to reach back and contribute to someone else's success too.